Good morning, everyone. My name is Voon. I'm from Arkitek KDI, and today I'm going to show a few of my projects. 5 of them. There are some bigger projects and some smaller ones. There are some projects whereby we inserted some small ideas. Hope you don't mind. Apart from that, I wish to thank Untitled Chapter for inviting myself to be here, sharing some of my works with you. And especially, I also feel quite glad and at the same time feel a bit inadequate that I'm going to speak alongside with my former boss, William, someone whom I've been looking up to. And I'm also looking forward for his talk later. Yep. So my first project is a small project in Miri. It's a semi-D project whereby the site is actually on the high ground nearby the airport. And this is the site photos where it's taken during our site visit. You can see the red lines actually outlines the boundaries of the site. The top 2 photos shows the good view, the views that one can obtain from the site. And the site is also blessed with a lot of prevailing winds. So the client's requirement is simple, a practical, market-friendly. Okay, thanks. Okay. Practical, market-friendly, do not break the bank. And so this is a floor plan that we come up with, something that's quite efficient and well accepted by the general market. So we were thinking, what can we do to insert some, uniqueness into the projects? So we started with playing some Lego. So that's my childhood pastime hobbies. So now I'm doing it in SketchUp. So this is, we do some form giving exercise, adding up the roof. Of course, there are many versions that we did, so this is only one of them. And I thought the site is sitting right on top of the hill and actually can see landings and the plane landing and all that. So maybe we could relate something to aerodynamism, add some elements of high tech into it, and make it look a little bit like maybe spaceship. And so we start thinking of pulling in some points and try to transform the shape into something that is less familiar, or maybe it's an approach that I call it the defamiliarization of standard form. So this is the final design that we did, and this is photos that we took last month during the OP inspections. So some details are not exactly done as per our details, but I think the general concept is there, whereby the elements of a little bit of slantings, lines, things. Most importantly, the client accepted it because it does not break the bank, and this is the final outcome. And I'm reasonably happy with the result. The second project I'm sharing will be Windsor Estate. So for those who are in Kuching, will be quite familiar with this project, whereby every time you drive from Boulevard to the airport, you will see this group of detached houses towards the end of the junction. So this is the location of the site, and there are about 51 units of them, all identical detached houses. And in this project, we actually challenge the conventions or the standard practice of housing typology. So it is a modification from semi-detached house typology. So this is actually a brainchild of my director, Dr. Sri John Lau. So I'm here just to convey how we developed the idea from a semi-D into a zero-boundary detached house. So this is a This is a standard MED, so we could do something like this, which is we just shift it to one side and become a zero boundary. But the underlying problem of this is when you need to paint your own house, you need to get consent from your neighbor. So we set back a little bit, 1 meter from the boundary, and but it's still not very we are still not very satisfied with the result because there will be a huge piece of party wall. You can't put any window here. We checked with the Momba, they do not allow any windows on that side. So it's probably going to look awful if we just leave it as a blank wall. So we try another way. We divide the areas into 3 equal parts, whereby we sacrifice a little bit of footprint and shift it, become like this. So it becomes like a zigzag kind of shapes. So the size of party wall will be a lot smaller, and it's still there. We still need to comply with the Mumbai requirement, putting the party wall. And this is the floor plan. So as you can see, there are 2 solid walls, one at the living room, another one at the guest room. So those 2 solid walls is still there. Upper floors. We also insert some ideas of split level planning in the house in order to minimize the circulation area, which is corridor, that is unusable. So you can see that every staircase landing actually acts as a circulation space. So we make full use of the staircase as a circulation. And its upper floor. This is a section over the house. So we can see clearly that the split levels actually give the, minimize the corridor space. And at the same time, it also gives a much higher living room, much higher headroom for living room. We can achieve up to 4 meters after ceiling. And minimizing corridors again. And in the section through the central part of the house, we have a double volume dining room. And right next to it is a staircase, which acts as an air well. And hot air can come in from the sliding doors at the dining area and go up and exit through the family room up there, through the staircase as an air well. And some details that we introduce is the sharp details, the fascia details, in order to make the house look, the roof look a little bit more sleek from the elevation. So this is the house. We have a roof that is a very generous overhang, about 3.5 meters. Thanks to the engineer, we are able to do it. And balconies act as a buffer between external and internal, give it a bit of shield from the heat. Shading system at the front elevation, also to add more elements to the elevation. In terms of color, we deliberately chose to use timber tone, although they are aluminum, but we thought in our country, in our climate, timber is something that people always love to be associated with. So also it softened down the overall color scheme of the house. So every house is equipped with a reflective pond, which can act as a cooling agent to the house. So this is a living room with high ceiling, and this double volume dining room. So this was the rendering that we did for the marketing brochure. And I'm quite glad that it turned out the same, so we did not lie in our brochure. So this is a street view. Something that we introduced at the roof, a very minor tweak, is the roof profile. It looked a bit like a curved roof, but actually they are flat, whereby we actually just make the roof a bit slanted and then go straight. So it looked a bit like flat, a bit like curved roof, but actually they are flat. So also another way of doing design without being too expensive. So these are some other views. So next project I'm sharing is the first major projects that I've handled as a project architect back in 2011. So when I came into this project, it was already designed by a colleague. So the site is at next to Rajang River. And this is the overall plan. And this was the original design when I took over the project. So it was designed by a former colleague. The concept is having a soaring, spreading wings on the top. So the roof, what do you call that? The roof actually looks a bit like a soaring wing. And the archway in between actually signifies a gateway to Cebu. Also, as a corporate image for Rimbunan Hijau, which is a highly successful corporation originated from Cebu. So this is a refinement that I did. I have a habit of doing models exactly as per tender drawings. So this was done exactly as per tender drawings. But towards the later stage of the project, the client decided to take out all the fins. So it's a bit of pity, but it's probably inevitable due to cost saving. So this was the final design of it. So we have quite a long span in the middle, 30-meter long span, and the engineers actually designed a series of box beams to support the bridge and form the gateway. In terms of the facade design, so this was the working drawing that handed over to me. So I thought, now that we can't do the fin, what can we do? So one thing that we inserted into the facade is to, we vary the shades of the facade, whereby we introduce two shades of tint. Actually, there are one type is the low-E glass, low-E tinted glass, and then another type would be, the one that hatched here would be the, what they call the reflective glass. And we have checked the U value, they actually comply. They are similar U value, and at the same time, it actually gives a bit of richness to the facade. Otherwise, it will be plain. So this is the result of it. It's another view from as you approach the building. It's the entrance view towards the archway, and another view from the other side. So there are some sharp corners that I thought is quite nice, but apparently some of them do not like it because it's a bit too sharp and not good as a feng shui, according to some. So this is the view that shows the soaring wing concept that originally from the previous architect, and I think it's quite visibly from this image. And this is also my favorite image of the project. And we also have a little area next to the building whereby we need to design a semi-covered amphitheater. So the red area actually signifies where the amphitheater is. We did some form study over the shaded area. So this is the study. So we sort of segmentize them into series of lines. And then we pull up the lines and see what the shapes we got. So of course, this again is the final shape that we've chosen. There are many shapes that we've thrown away, and we work with the engineers, and we get this quite a pragmatic, buildable structures using steel trusses, and then we cover it with standing seam, standing seam roofing, to achieve the aerodynamic kind of shapes. And this is the final result of it. This is a view from the low level. Another view. Unfortunately, the workmanship is a little bit not to my expectation, but the overall form is still there. So the next project I'm sharing is the New Sarawak Museum. So some of you may wonder, how come the perspective look different here? So this is actually our winning competition scheme that actually landed us the job of doing it. But it wasn't as what we have now. But this is the competition scheme. So it started with a tremendous study on the site, and So this was the original Dewan Tun Abdul Rajak, if some of you are familiar with it. It's an old building. So the site actually kind of have an unfriendly access. You need to enter from Jalan P. Ramlee, which is perceived as the back door or the back side of the street. And so we thought another issue that we see is the sites are very beautiful with greens, a bit of hilly kind of space, but then they are all fragmented in a way. The Padang, the Historical Sarawak Museum, and also of course, the new museum site, they are all fragmented in 3 very strong, solid, independent blocks. So this was the sketch done by Dr. Sri John Lau. So the idea is that we intend to weave the urban fabric of the 3 fragmented pieces into one by using we call it a green connector. So there are 2 of them. So this site plan just shows one, you can see there is a green connector A connecting to Padang Merdeka, and the other one connecting to Historical Sarawak Museum. And the new Sarawak Museum sitting in between the 2. So in a way, it actually weaves the urban fabric together into one. So in terms of the form-giving exercise for the new Sarawak Museum in our old scheme, is that we look into 2 different approaches of creating a museum architecture. So one is that we can design a museum as a sculpture as is on right, just like this Denver Art Museum, Guggenheim Museum that all architects are familiar with. Or we can also go for the totally opposite approach of museum as a functional space to showcase the collections. And what we have found is that the architects tend to love the method on the left, and the museum practitioner, they love the right side. So kind of a conscious decision among us is that we chose to go to the right side of it. And this was the idea. Again, this is a conceptual sketch on the messing by Dr. Sri John Lau. And the idea of form making actually is inspired by the Parthenon in Greece, because they have quite a similar setting with our site, whereby it's we have a building sitting on the hill. So this was our design composition scheme. The concept of it, we call it as a sanctuary of art, something that is sitting on top of a hill. And you can see the green connector connecting to the Padang, and it sort of connect the both sides of the museum and the Padang kind of integrate together, whereby the activities actually can spill over to the museum, to the Padang, and vice versa. So this is a view from the Hero Memorial. You can see another green connector connecting to the Historical Old Museum. So in terms of the internal planning, we study a little bit on the visitor circulation. So this is the floor plan diagram of level 1, which is actually at the top of the bridge. So there are 1 entry point from the top of the bridge, and they enter from the level 1, and the escalator will bring them down to a sub-basement. So the main lobby actually happens at sub-basement, and we have a central atrium next to the lobby. So this is the small image actually indicates the lobby, the atrium. And the visitor, in order for visitor to visit the museum, they have to take a lift to the top floor at level 3, and they visit the galleries from top down with winding ramps from the top. Actually, this is a concept inspired by Guggenheim Museum. So from level 3 to level 2, similarly from level 2 to level 1, and there's an exit point at level 1 to the outdoor exhibition, or they can also go further down back to the sub-basement. So this is a view of the atrium. So you can see the winding ramps and the skylights from the top with some, indirect sunlight that lit up the atrium. This is a section through the building. You can see the link between Padang Merdeka and the level 1 is seamlessly connected together. And this is a view from the Padang elevation. And this is a close-up view of the building. So the little box down there is the entrance pavilion, and we deliberately lift up the whole box and give it a floating effect and set back all the, the atrium space. And the sections, there are some, the elements that we introduced. The perforated screen with traditional motifs. Water feature as a cooling agent for the overall microclimate. And the main entrance being at the entrance pavilion. So this is a section through the building. So we thought by setting in a lot of giving a huge set in, we actually can explore the idea of the atrium being naturally ventilated, and with the cool air going across, the evaporative cooling effect can achieve through the pond, and a bit of diffuse light from the top. So it's kind of like a energy saving kind of design. And this is a night view. So fast forward a year from us winning the competition. So we have got a call from the client saying that, okay, so this of course is the latest design of it, but a bit of history of why we did the design was the clients actually requested us to have a bit of correlations with the existing Dangan Negeri building, because the two buildings are actually located on the same axis, and actually from one building you can see another one clearly, so sort of have a language, something that they would prefer to have a similar language of architecture. Of course, we also proposed quite a number of schemes. We actually proposed about 12 schemes. There's, of course, the one that we originally submitted, and this one that they have selected, and in between them, there are about many schemes that located somewhere in between the two, modern and the language that they wanted. So they've chose this scheme, which was originally prepared by our colleagues in Kumpulan Design Cebu. So you can see that some of the original concept were retained, like the crane connector to the historical Sarawak Museum. However, the other side of it was eventually omitted due to the cost constraint, also technical difficulties. So, but we retained the existing underpass anyway. This is the external wall cladding that you can see from the solid part of the main museum. So the patterns actually is inspired by recurring patterns in our traditional craft. So we have Songket Sarawak, the Puak Kumbu, and the rattan weaving. They all have the similar kind of basic shapes, which is a diamond or a rhombus shape. So we took that shapes and we developed them into the facade. These are basic shape. So we fold it. First we fold it, and then we add some lines, because when we're using composite panels, there are some limit of sizes that we can go for. And thirdly, we add a slight color difference in order to get the effect of a kind of triangulated 3D kind of effect by not doing too much of folding, because it may be a bit technically difficult to build. So we use color to achieve the effect instead. So with this module, we repeated it throughout the facade, and this is the result that we get. And these photos was taken in one evening, and I was expecting the facade to have 4 different shades of colors, but at that evening, I was pleasantly surprised that at certain kind of sunlight, actually it gives us more than just 4 shades. So you can see from the right hand side of the facade, whereby the sun shines onto it, there are multiple shades of colors. So this is a close-up view. So over here you can see there are two color difference, and at different angles, when sunlight are projected onto it, it produces different colors. So there are 4 color difference. These are views at night. So I'll share a little bit also on the museum internal zoning, which some of the students here may be interested to know. In the typical museum, the zoning is divided into mainly 4. So non-public, non-collection, non-public collection, public, non-collection, and public collection. It's a little bit complicated, but anyway, it's just mainly talking about 2 things. One is visitor, and secondly is collections. So first, I will go through a little bit about the visitor circulation throughout the museum. So we have 2 entrances. One is from level 1, which is a car park. And from there, there's a level 1 would be more like an event space. We have a temporary gallery whereby visiting exhibitions will come, and they will change the exhibition every now and then, every few months. And we have an auditorium, function room, and some sporting services. So this level is intended to be more kind of more active in a way, and it can be a bit more noisy than the rest of the museum. At level 2, so this is the main level of the atrium. So there are galleries on both sides, some commercials. So the circulation basically repeat throughout the museum at every floor at a similar kind of configuration. The only difference is some galleries are a lot bigger and some galleries are a lot smaller. Like this floor, the galleries are smaller, and we crafted a number of voids looking towards the gallery below. So it also gives a bit of flexibility to the museum that they can actually place bigger objects in the voids. So these are all the repetitions. We also have a bit of visible storage at the annex building. And this is the section through the atrium. So firstly, one can arrive at the level 1 entrance void. And the event space all happens at the level 1. And the main atrium void is at level 2. There's another entrance at level 2, whereby you can go through the underpass and you reach at level 2 of the museum. We also introduced a staggering platform for special exhibit area. Actually, it's meant for museum to put high objects onto the platforms. So because of the volumetric design of the atrium, museum can move multiple numbers of big objects on the platforms. Another aspect of the circulation is from the point of view of a collection. So if, let's say, Mona Lisa decided to come to Surround Museum, they'll go through this path. They will load them at the loading bay, and first they go through the dirty zone, unpack the exhibit, and then they'll go through the clean zone, and then the clean zone, they will fumigate the objects, go through the conservation lab and all that. And they can either go through the service lift to other floors, or they can go straight to temporary gallery. So from the service lift actually brings the objects either down to the storage or up to the galleries. And there are strictly no crisscrossing between visitors' circulations and the collection circulations. So this circulation at the bottom, the storage area. Okay, we also introduced a central monorail hoist at the middle of the atrium. So this is actually the reflected ceiling plan of level 5, whereby there's a hoist hidden inside the ceiling. The function of the hoist is that when the museum has, say, what you call that, 10-meter long objects that cannot go through the service lift. This is where they can actually transport the objects. And the staggering platform that we have designed originally kind of incidentally served as the purpose. It wasn't designed for out of the original idea of having the hoist, but somehow it served the purpose of giving an option for museum to land big object at every levels, which is something that probably not many museums are able to provide. So this is a staggering platform from the bottom when you look up. So of course now there are no object onto it being exhibited here, but in the future we can imagine the voids with the monorail hoist. There are things that can be artwork that can be hanged from the top and serve as a major wow factor when once is entering the museum. Okay, in terms of the color and texture for the interior design, so the interior design is done by my colleague Sharon, because she is here with us. So we deliberately chose to use natural color tones and texture that are more darker for the lower floors and lighter at the upper floors, sort of signifying a transition from the earth to the sky, resembling a variety of Sarawakian landscape from a riverbank to a mountain. So this is a view from the lower floors. We use extensively the Nyato timber veneer and just one tone with different ways of projecting them. There are strips, there are panels, and they are the only more elaborated panels is the auditorium. And we intentionally keep all the treatment very toned down in the way so that when the museum actually exhibit things, we do not want the exhibit to be overshadowed by our interior design. So this is another view at the lower floors. These are auditorium panels that are inspired by the weaving, traditional weaving. These are upper floors. We also incorporated some traditional crafted material into our ID. So this is a reception counter conceptual sketch whereby we are using a Penang rattan mat harvested from Miri. So this is a kampong that we went to collect the rattan mats. And this is the actual mat that they are doing. So yes, these are the Penang people, Penang ladies doing the weaving. And this is a result of us using the panels as the reception counter. Something that we find it quite meaningful that we can include the community involvement into our projects. We also do the same for the auditorium backstage. So this is another view of the reception counter. So the auditorium stage backdrop, we are using the Bemban mat from the Iban community. And these panels from the backdrop actually is a Bemban mat. They also serve as a kind of like an acoustic kind of panels for the auditorium. So another part of the design of the atrium is actually at the top, the ceiling, whereby we have what do you call that, space below the arches, whereby we have huge ceiling space that we can explore some special design here. So the yellow part signifies where the area is, and again we did some study for the form. Segments subdivide them along the axis, and something that is in harmony with the facade design from the exterior. We carry to the internal. We draw some lines, and we pull the lines upwards. And of course, this is a long process. We did many versions of it, and this is a final form. And we incorporate the M&E, smoke spill, and all that into the middle parts. And this is the final result. And this is another view with the lighting being on. So it's located at the top floor and consistent with the idea of having lighter tone at the top and signify that the transition from lower levels to the top, whereby signify more like a kind of like a sky, and the lower parts is more like earth. We managed to keep one green connector being built. So it was quite a long process working with the structural engineers. We had a number of good fights, although surprisingly, both of us are quite happy with the result, although we hardly agree on anything throughout the process of design developing it. And we remain friends though. And the structural design is done with a precast U-beam with 2 RC piers, something that we have a lengthy debate on the approach that we should go for, but we decided to settle down with this approach. The engineer gave us this shape. They say, this is all you can do. Don't change it. And we say, no, we segregate the RC fascia at the edges, and we turn it into a smooth form. And the contractor actually says it's very much buildable. We set coordinates for the contractors from the elevation and from the plan. There are many points from A to P. Basically, there are a series of linear lines that join together with coordinates vertical and horizontal. And the contractor managed to execute it pretty well. This is under construction, the view. And when it is completed, it's just around the corner. I do not have many good photos of it, but if you drive by, you should be able to see the bridge already. So this is another photo of it. That's all from me, and thank you very much.